So, comparison of two samples using t-test. The two-sample t-test is one of the most commonly used hypothesis tests in Six Sigma work. It is applied to compare whether the average difference between two groups is really significant or if it is due instead to random chance. To perform this test, both samples must be normally distributed. So, ang t-test, kay ginagamit ni siya to compare the data nga nakuha sa duha ka groups. Daghang klase sa t-test natay ginatawag nga between groups o within groups. Kining between groups t-test or mas nailan nga independent sample t-test or in other term, t-test for uncorrelated samples. Which means kung ang samples nato kay independent, then kani sila walay kalabutan sa matag usa. Or which means duha kalahi nga groups. Kay pwede man pod nga gamiton panimo otro tong group sa isa ka condition. Pero dili ka mag-change og dependent, mao na gitawag nga dependent. Pero og gabulag ang duha ka groups, like for example, group of girls, group of boys, then mao na siya gitawag og independent sample t-test. Para asa de ang t-test? Ginapakita sa atong computation sa t-statistics kung naabay significance difference between the groups. Particularly sa katong duha ka groups sa atong computation. Ang significance difference means unexpected difference. So what does it mean? Kay usahay naay difference o kalahian na expected pud siya.
Three main types of t-test. First is independent samples t-test. This compares the mean of two groups. This compares the means of two groups in order to determine whether there is statistical evidence that the associated population means are significantly different. Next is paired sample t-test. This compares the means from the same group at different times. Paired sample t-test is used when we are interested in the difference between two variables for the same subject. Lastly is one sample t-test. This tests the means of a single group against known mean. So, the one sample t-test is a statistical hypothesis test used to determine whether an unknown population is different from a specific value. Hypothesis. A statistical hypothesis test is a method of statistical inference used to determine a possible conclusion from two different and unlikely conflicting hypotheses, and an alternative hypothesis is proposed for the probability distribution of the data. So, hypothesis testing is used to assess the plausibility of a hypothesis by using sample data. The test provides evidence concerning the plausibility of the hypothesis given the data.
Null hypothesis. This is a type of hypothesis wherein the U1 and U2 are equal. The null hypothesis denoted as HO, that is, U1 is equal to U2. Null hypothesis. Matawag sa null hypothesis if ang population means of two groups are the same or equal. Let's say for example, si group A o group B, ang overall population mean ni group A kay 7.0 to kay group B po pareha sila 7.0 as resulted for null hypothesis. Second one is alternative hypothesis. This is the type of hypothesis that is usually variation in sample observation results purely from chance. Alternative hypothesis is denoted as HA, that is U1 and U2. Matawag sa alternative hypothesis if it is population means of two groups are not the same. Example, iyang population means sa duha ka group are dili siya pareha. And here's the 5 step in hypothesis testing. Number 1 is specify the null hypothesis. Second one is to specify the alternative hypothesis and set the significance level. Calculate the test statistic and corresponding p-value. And lastly, drawing a conclusion.
Making decisions using p-value. The p-value used to factually assess the strength of both and null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. P-value are decimal value between 0 and 1, which serves as probabilistic references to weight the hypothesis. Sometimes the value is also expressed as a percentage. So, we have to make a decision in a hypothesis test using p-value. P-value or probability p-value is how likely are to get the sample statistic if the null hypothesis were actually true. To make decision, we have to compare the p-value to the level of significance. If the p-value is less than or equal to alpha, then we are going to reject the null hypothesis. If the p-value is greater than alpha, then we are going to fail to reject the null hypothesis. Decision rule. When conducting hypothesis, there are two possible decisions. Reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject the null hypothesis.
Possible outcomes of testing null hypothesis. There are two possible outcomes to a hypothesis test. Reject the null hypothesis H sub 0, in which case we have intents in support of the alternative hypothesis. Not reject the hypothesis is H sub A, in which we do not have enough evidence the alternative hypothesis. It means kung wala kay sakto nga data nga makulik, i-reject nimo siya kay naka-support pero ga-assume lang ka nga sakto imong data nga nakulik nga equal to siya pero mali da ito. So contradictory siya sa null hypothesis. Then about sa H sub A, means not reject the null hypothesis kay dili siya ga-support nga dili siya ga-believe nga equal gid ang nakulik sa imong data between example sa two groups na nag-test sa duha ka groups. Ang imong isa ka kauban nga nag-support siya, nag-believe siya nga ang group A nakakuha og high score, din ang group A is nakakuha og low score, din group B dito. One-tailed test. One-tailed test is a statistical test in which the critical area of a distribution, which is the one-sided, so that it is greater than or less than a certain value, but not both. If sample being tested into one-sided critical area, the alternative hypothesis will be accepted instead of null hypothesis. Magamit ra nato ang one-tailed test kung mag-use ta og greater than or less than symbol in our alternative hypothesis. Mag-perform ta og one-tailed test. Kung statistic na falls inside the critical region, the null hypothesis is rejected at chosen significance level. Then imong alternative hypothesis lang i-accept kay kuan man nagbelieve man ka nga greater than or less than imong critical value.
State null hypothesis in words. The mean leaf length between the two rice varieties are the same, so this means that the null hypothesis is a statement of no difference, no effects, or stated in neutral form. The null hypothesis is a statistical hypothesis that assumes that the observation is due to a chance factor. The null hypothesis is denoted by H0, which shows that there is no difference between the two population means. State the null hypothesis in symbol. So the symbol for the null hypothesis is H0. State the alternative hypothesis in words. The mean leaf length between the two rice varieties are different. This means that the alternative hypothesis, in which a difference between two or more variables is anticipated. State the alternative hypothesis in symbol. So the symbol for alternative hypothesis is HA.
In 1.3 question, calculate the mean of left length of variety of x. So the missing in this equation is the mean. So probably we have to find the mean. So we need to find the total of variety of x. The total of variety of x is equivalent to 401.6. The question is, where did we get the 401.6? Well, we need to add all the variety of x, then total is 401.6. Next, we have to find the sample size. So there are 12 plants, so it means that the sample size is 12. The mean is equals to 401.6, which is the total of variety of x over 12, which the represents sample size. I-divide na to ang 401.6 sa 12, then the result is 33.46. So the total of sample mean is 33.46. Then sa 1.4, in this given situation, we have to calculate the mean of a left length of variety of y. Well, siyempre gyapon siya sa number 1.3. However, we have to find the left length of variety of y. First, we need to find the total variety of y. So we have to add all the variety of y, then the result is 263. So it means that 263 is the total variety of y, and the sample size is 10. The mean is equal to 263 over 10, then the result is 26.3. And ang total mean niya kay 26.3.
Exercise 4, question 1.7. For variety x, multiply the variance by the degree of freedom using this formula. N1 minus 1 the s sub 1 squared equals to the 12 minus 1 times 2.74 equals 30.14. Kining 1.7, gisunod lang ang formula nga n minus 1 which is ang n kay 12 minus 1 na equals to 11. Tapos i-multiply dayon sa variance nga 2.74 and the result of ang answer kay 30.14. Sa question 1.8, for variety y, multiply the variance by the degree of freedom using this formula. Degree of freedom is equal to n minus 1. Then sa 1.8, gi-follow ra gyapon ang formula but in the variety y nga n 2 minus 1 which is ang mean sa variety y is 10 minus 1 is equals to 9. Multiply dayon sa variance sa variety of y which is 5.36 and the answer is 48.24.
Obtain the fold variance by adding the two variants together and divide the total degrees of freedom. So we have the formulas. SP2 equals n minus 1 is 1 squared is our sample variance plus n2 minus 1 is our sample variance number 2. Then over n plus 1 plus n2 is our sample size number 1 and sample size number 2 minus degrees of freedom. Then we try to add our two sample variance. 30.14 plus 48.4 equals 78.38. Then compute the sample size number 1 and 2. 12 plus 10 minus degrees of freedom which is 2. Then we have the total 20 degrees of freedom. Then divide it. 78.38 divide sa 20 equals 3.92 fold variance. Calculate the standard error of the difference SD between the means. SD is our standard error because square root of fold variance 1 divide n1. N1 is our sample size number 1 plus 1 divide n2 which is sample size number 2 square root of 3.92. First we need to calculate the two sample size. 1 divide 12 plus 1 divide 10 equals 0.18 and get the square root of fold by 3.92 times 0.18 equals square root of 0.71. 0.71 equals 0.84 which is the standard error deviation.
In 1.11, the question is we have to find the t-value. Then the symbol x1 symbolize the total mean of variety of x and the x2 symbolize the total sample mean of variety of y. The t-value is equals to 33.47. Mao ni ang sample sa mean of variety of x minus 26.3 which is the sample mean of variety of y divided by the standard error of the difference which is 0.84. The result is 7.17 over 0.84 is equals to 8.53 and the final result is the t-value is 8.53. Sakto.
Table of t-distribution at degrees of freedom, sample size 1 plus sample size 2 minus 2 at alpha 0.01 and compare the compound t-value with a tabular t-value. So degrees of freedom sample size 1 is 12 plus sample size 2, which is 10, equals to 22 minus 2, which will be 20. So the compound p-value will be 0.01, and its tabular value is 2.845.
1.13. State your decision with regards to your null hypothesis. Since t-value is much bigger than t to the power 1, I reject the null hypothesis.
Make a short conclusion based on the result. Based on the results between the distribution of degrees of freedom, there is a significance between the two variables. Because the difference of standard significant evidence against the null hypothesis is they reject the null hypothesis, which is greater than.
Suppose a sample of 7 students were given a diagnostic test before studying a particular module and then again after completing the module. Find out if, in general, the teaching leads to improvements in students' knowledge or skills. Compute the appropriate t-test and then make a short conclusion based on the result. Use a 0.5 level of significance. So here is the table of the 7 students that was given a diagnostic test before studying a particular module and then again after completing the module. So in pre-module, the total score of the students, of the 7 students, is 137. And then in the post module, the total is 153. And their difference is negative 16. So letter D not state the null hypothesis in words. The mean knowledge or skills of 7 students that was given a diagnostic test before studying a particular module and then after completing the module is the same. State the null hypothesis in symbol. So HO, so ang symbol sa null hypothesis is the x sub 1 is equal to x sub 2. State the alternative hypothesis in words. So the mean knowledge or skills of students that was given a diagnostic test before studying a particular module and then after completing the module is not the same. And then next, state the alternative hypothesis in symbol. So ano siya? Ang kuan. X sub 1 is not equal to x sub 2. For student 1, find the difference D between treatment A and treatment B. So D is equal to A minus B. At siyang i-substitute, kung say A sa student 1 is 18 and then minus 2, 22 sa student number 1 sa post module. And then ilang difference is negative 4. Sa student 2, difference nila is negative 4 gyapon. Sa student 3, negative 1. Student 4, negative 2. Student 5, 3. Student 6, negative 5. And then student 7 is negative 3. So 2.4.1. Obtain the total of A. So ang total sa A is 137. And then obtain the total of B. So ang total sa B is 153. Obtain the total of D, negative 16. And then calculate the means of A. So kaning si diri sa A is imo siyang i-substitute. So x sub A is equal to A divided by dn. So ang total sa kuan in A 137. So mo siya. And then, i-divide nato siya sa letter N nga 7 ka students. So 137 divided by 7 is equal to 19.5714. And then calculate the means of B. Mara gyud to siya. Ang total sa kuan, ang total sa B is 153 divided by 7 students is equal to 21.8571. And then calculate the means of D. Magyapon to siya. Negative 16 divided by 7 students is equal to 2.28571. And then find the summation of D squared. So, pakita man yung summation. So, ato siyang ipang squared tanan. Ang kuan sa, ang difference sa A o B. So, negative 4 squared plus negative 4 squared plus negative 1 squared plus negative 2 squared plus 3 squared plus negative 5 squared plus negative 3 squared is equal to 80. Find the variance of D. So, ano to siya? 80 minus negative 16. So, wala pa siya i-divide ng 7. Negative 16. Negative 16 squared divided by 7 over 7 minus 1. So, ano siya? Sundan na to ang formula. No, ang nasabot niya is n minus 1. So, 7 minus 1 is equal to 80 minus, so ang answer sa negative 16 squared is 36.57 divided by 6. Kaya di minus ito ang 7 minus 1 is equal to 6. So, ano siya? Ano ni siya ito ang karon nasa ubos. So, the answer of 80 minus 36.57 divided by 6 is equal to 7.24. So, ano na itong variance sa D karon? Ang 7.24. Next is find the standard deviation of the difference sa D. So, to get the standard deviation, kuan, atong square root ang variance, di ba? Atong variance is 7.24. So, ato siyang square root, answer niya is 2.70. So, muna siya atong standard deviation. And then next, calculate the standard error of the mean, or SED. So, ang SE, standard error, is equal to standard deviation divided by the mean na naka-square root. So, ito siyang ikuan, substitute. So, ang SD is, sa itong standard deviation, is 2.70. 2.70 is equal to, sa itong N, pila itong N, 7, kay 7 students, divided by 7, square root of 7. Equals 2.70. So, ang square root sa 7 is 2.64. So, the answer is 2.70 divided by 2.64 is equal to 1.0. Next, calculate the t value and round your final answer to the nearest 100. So, t is equal to d over standard error is what siya, substitute tayo na to. So, atong D, di ba kay, di ba atong D is negative 16, tapos then divide ito siya og 7. So, nahimo na siya og negative 2.2857. So, manong siya, mo man siya ang given ta karon. So, di ba kay D, di ba divide standard error. So, equals negative 2.2857 divided by sa atong standard error nga 1.0. Equals negative 2.2857. So, okay. Ato man siyang i-round off sa kuan, nearest 100. So, may mo na siya og negative 2.3. Mo ni siya ato ang karon t value. Negative 2.3. Next is, obtain the tabular t value at df equals, ino ba? Negative 1 from the table of t distribution at df equals n minus 1 at alpha equals 0.05 and compare the computed t value with the tabular t value. So, ang atong df kay, di ba gihatag man diri nga ang df is n minus 1. So, sa atong n, 7. I-minus to siya 1. 6. So pangita ko na to ang 6 sa T distribution na dito na, and then dapat na siya dapit sa alpha 0.5 or 0.05. So ang atong kuan karon is 2.447. Mana siya ang nasa kuan sa T distribution, no? So 6, mga atong DF ang 6, and then kuan na to siya sa 0.05, itunong na to siya sa 6, and then 0.05 ang ilang kuan is 2.447. Ano siya? So next is state your decision with regards to your null hypothesis. Mag-decide na ta kung ato bang i-reject si null hypothesis o atong dawaton. Tabular T value at alpha 0.05 with DF6 equals 2.447, which is greater than TS. Hence, we would accept HO or null hypothesis at alpha 0.05. So, unsa kasabutan ni? Kay dako mas lesser man ang ato ang T value compared sa nakuha nato sa T distribution na with DF6 pag sa alpha nga 0.5. So, i-accept na to ang null hypothesis. Finally, na-accept na din. So, make a short conclusion based on the results. So, ano siya ang conclusion? The knowledge or skills of students that was given a diagnostic test before studying a particular module and then after completing the module was the same. So, someone answer is the same. Di-accept na mo ang null hypothesis. So, sabot ani nga gi-accept na to ang null hypothesis, ang knowledge ko no or skills sa 7 ka students nga gitagaan og diagnostic test sa kuan kining before studying a particular module and then after completing the module was the same. So same lang ilang knowledge, no? So wala pa sila nag-study sa kuan and then sa pag-complete sa module, same lang ang knowledge of skills. And that could be all. Thank you.